Welcome to Talking Early Years, a showcase training podcast with Ellen Roberts
and Gemma Carr.
Hello and welcome to today's Talking Early Years podcast. On this episode, we're going to be discussing early years and gender roles within settings. And we have our special guest, Trin. Trin, how are you?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you. How are you?
Yes, very good, thanks. So let's dive on in. So the first question we like to ask whenever we have a guest on is, please tell us a little bit about yourself. Who are you and what do you do? How did you get to here?
So I'm Trinity Strange. So I've worked in early years since I was about 19 years old. So I worked my way up there, and then I decided I wanted to have a little bit of a career change and kind of share my knowledge and my experience with other apprentices. So I did my carver, and that's how I ended up here at Showcase Training.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Trin. Welcome to our little podcast. Hopefully you enjoyed the experience today. So we're talking all about gender roles within settings. What are gender roles and what does this mean?
So gender roles are culturally and socially constructed expectations regarding behaviours, attitudes and characteristics deemed appropriate for individuals based on their gender. So kind of a couple of examples of that would be women should be in the kitchen and men should be on building sites. You know, that's a very gender stereotypical view.
Yeah, I was also reading that the ideas and expectations that children experience between birth and the age of 7, so obviously the age range that the EYFS covers, it's in that age range where it has a long-lasting effect on things like identity, confidence and life choices. By the age of 2 to 3, children begin to label themselves as either boys or girls, and then by the age of 4 they tend to pick up on the cultural stereotypes and influence from parents, family members, books, children around them, and that kind of thing. So we are talking very early on in life, really, that between that sort of 2 and 4 age ranges where it was really shaping who they view themselves as, and those gender roles and gender stereotypes really come into effect.
I think in those ages they're really influenced by a lot of things, a lot of views, a lot of opinions, and I don't think parents or other adults around them realise how impressionable they are at that age, and how that really embeds them into their sort of idea of themselves and what they want or what they expect of themselves as they get older.
I think it's also kind of comes to the child development processes as well, kind of what it all comes down to ultimately as well. So similarly, if you're talking to children about animals, for example, you've got they learn that a horse is a big animal with 4 legs. Therefore, any animal that is big with 4 legs is a horse until they get to that 3-4 age group, and when they can start to determine, actually that's a cow, actually that's a buffalo, actually that's an elephant, you know, whatever that is, they can then start determining the differences of them. So again, they're seeing children in certain coloured clothing, certain outfits or certain haircuts, certain activities they're playing with. They go, that's a boy because they do those things. So at that 2-3 age group is when they start kind of, where like you said there, and that's where they sort of start determining those differences, and actually that's where that boy girl changes kind of thing.
That's really interesting as well, because I think we always kind of assume that children learn who they are or their identity much older, but that makes so much sense that for very young children there's so much to learn that the brain almost categorizes it for them just to stop that kind of overwhelm. So it's a really interesting part of child development.
And again, it's kind of I think, yes, children do find their identity as they get older. Of course they do, you know, kind of become their own little person. But at that point, there is an element, like you say, that they are just going off what they see around them, and what they know. And again, I think it also, kind of comes into not what we're discussing so much today, but again, different races and religions, different areas that you're living in, you know, children see those different races around them, the different ethnicities of fellow children, and kind of see those differences as well, and kind of can start to see those differences. And again, it's that equality, diversity, inclusion, including everybody equally.
I think you also have to look at the aspects of like social norms and things like that. I know a lot of people have within their own family environment different sort of social norms that they go off as well. So how does that sort of affect those gender roles as they're maturing, if that makes sense? If you're looking at from when they're probably about that teenage years, they're so impressionable, society around them, what school groups, what do they have to look like, what's cool at the moment, and if you're thinking of those, say for like girls, it is to be pretty, sometimes some of them are to be pretty pink, make sure that like they are suiting into that kind of role and that social norm, to not be so outside. So that's when like I think the gender roles are really embedded, is when they're at that teenage impressionable stage.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, because you, in sort of the brain chemistry and brain makeup, you have your neuroplastic windows really, where that neuroplasticity comes into effect. So you have that in the early childhood, and you have it at that late sort of mid kind of teenage range really, and that's exactly where we see it in society as well. You kind of look around to what other people are doing and you think, oh, I also like pink and I like dolls, therefore I must be a girl, you know. And whether that's actually the social construct of what a girl or a boy is, it's how that person's made to feel, and where they kind of slot in and fit into. So it's very interesting to see how that science kind of side of it is emulated in actual practice as well. Be interesting.
Do you think there is a cause for the child development and kind of the brain development, thinking about how synapses are created? Do you think that comes into play when it comes to gender roles? So, you know, they always see, for example, in their home, they would always see the mother doing the cooking and cleaning. So that's what's embedded into their brain through those kind of synapses and that brain development? Or do you think that's not seen so much?
I think that that plays a massive role into it. You're thinking, if you're a kid and you're looking at your mum is at home all the time and doing household, kind of running the household a bit more than their father, I think that's sort of naturally embedded into the way they think and how they view things, and how those gender roles play a part of their whole development. Because you think if you're constantly seeing something, then you're constantly thinking that's okay or that's right, or things like that. So I'm always thinking, like, if, for example, for myself, my mum was very much the stay-at-home mum. She ran the household. So for me to then come out of that and be, again, like I say, I'm in a same-sex couple, how do you kind of, I don't know how to explain it, how do you come out of that and then be like, oh, that's not actually right, I can do that, but and I can also work as well. It's having that balance, and I think that's where that growing up and having that life experience then comes into play with that. But I do think initially it does affect how they view things. When you're constantly seeing something within your family, that's how you probably perceive something to be later on in life.
Agreed. And it's almost unlearning things, and sometimes children will make the links between things that actually it's not there, and it doesn't really quite exist or work like that, as we kind of know later when you learn things, and it's almost unlearning those links sometimes, and knowing how things kind of fit together in a sort of social construct, and how we can challenge that, and where those boundaries are that are really important. And I think for me, we were talking just before we started recording the podcast, for me, gender roles straddles kind of two areas, really. So gender roles being about the child and how they identify, and challenging those norms for them to give them open opportunities and the equity in life to choose what they want to do for themselves, but also the role of gender in shaping a child. So the genders that are around them, and the influence of a mixture of genders. So whether it's male, female, non-binary, a change of gender, whatever it might be, is having those open opportunities for them to gather an understanding of opportunities. So it's, for me, it's not about having no genders, but it's about celebrating and recognizing differences and similarities, and that they're okay. I think that for me, sometimes I see people almost a bit scared to have things that are more female influenced or more male influenced. It doesn't mean that we can't have that. It's just that we need to recognize that there's inevitable crossover, and that's perfectly fine as well.
Absolutely. I think there's also sort of thinking about maybe what's happening currently, Ellen, as you sort of bring that up as well, is kind of the understanding the difference between gender roles and maybe a little bit of stereotyping in comparison to what misogyny is.
Yes.
And I think that is important to be aware of, and being able to understand what misogyny is and doing everything we can to squash that. So misogyny is the inherited hatred of women and a belief in the inferiority of women. So women are the lesser sex. So, and then sexism is the way misogyny manifests itself into this world. And this is extreme and not specifically what we are discussing. However, is important for us to be aware of that, and being aware in nurseries where these things are coming through. So is it that the child is seeing this as a gender role? This is what mummy and daddy do at home. Daddy goes off to work and mummy stays at home and works in the kitchen. Yeah. Or are these gender or generational gender roles that are coming through? Or are these things children potentially saying or doing? Is this coming from a misogynistic side?
Absolutely. And I think it's really important to mention as well, when we're talking about misogyny, we are also talking about misandry. So it's the male hating thing, because something that we see quite often as well in more female dominated element of childcare, especially in couples where the mum is the main caregiver for the children. Sometimes if there's a breakdown of relationship, or potentially something's happened there with their former male partner, is the sort of labeling and stereotyping of that male as being useless, you know, as being no good at being caregiving, you know, and almost putting down the male in that child's relationship and affecting how that child then views males as well. So I think it's on both sides. You've got misandry and misogyny working both in a very similar way, really, but in perpetuating that sexism on either side. And equality is about not putting down people. It is about raising people up and giving everybody equal opportunities, not at the cost of somebody else.
And equally here, I mean, we've got to bring up feminism as well here. Again, the field we work in as well, feminism isn't a negative thing. That doesn't go into those two categories. Feminism is fighting for your rights as a woman, you know, those kind of things, and doing that in the right way, in the safe way, and promoting those things, again, promoting each other in the field that we work and the women that we are with, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. Not at the cost of men. It's
about, men are irrelevant almost.
Yeah. Let's just ignore men and just have women. You know, that shouldn't be what it's about at all. It's about having equal opportunities and equality between the sexes. So what else, in terms of what's currently happening regarding sort of gender and gender roles, what kind of is the current theme and current flavour coming through in early years? What are we seeing?
I think in early years now, like we were just saying, we do give them all equal access to all the resources available for them. You're thinking about a lot of that free play where the children have that choice to kind of go off and play with what they want to play. There isn't the staff members there saying, oh no, you can't play with that. That's more of a boy toy to play with, or for the girls, like the boy wanted to play with a doll. We don't, in early years, you allow them to play with whatever, you allow them to expand their interests into whatever they want. And I think that's what's currently happening within early years. We are breaking that sort of gender roles or those sort of old-fashioned traditions down and allowing them to be who they want to be, play with what they want to, show as interest in as many things as they want to show interest into, regardless if it was socially normed of them not to do that before. Whereas we allow them to do that now. We encourage those interests and we encourage those different types of play for them.
One example for me, which I often talk about, I don't know if you guys have heard this before, but I was in a setting once and I have worked in toddlers. So this was in toddler room. So there was a little boy who was a confident walker, but was pushing around a buggy, and it was a pink Barbie buggy. And he was pushing it around the room. And for me, I was like, this is really lovely. Like he's, you know, the caregiving side of him, being a nurturing, compassionate person, playing with the babies. I can see you laughing, Trin, because you know exactly where this is going. But and I took a photo and I did an observation and I uploaded it to the tablet. That evening, the parent came in and the father shouted at me. I said, how dare you take a photo of my child playing with the buggy? You're going to make him gay.
It's just outrageous. I don't even know how people's mind work that way at all remotely.
Yeah. And it's just that kind of gobsmacked. Yeah, completely. And I just sat there and I was like, and I was kind of like, oh, he's going to be, you know, he's okay. I'm ready for that. You know, at this time I was experienced in my job role. I knew this parent. I had a good relationship with this parent, but he came in and he was a big 6'4" man. He was a very tall, broad man, and I felt very little next to him. But I sat there and I said, sorry, how is that going to happen? He's pushing around a pink buggy, playing with a baby. And so I had to sit there and kind of dissect this completely with him. And he still just could not understand what the benefits were for his child exploring these toys. And for me, I just went, I can't educate you into that. I can't there is no way that you can see that this is a positive thing. Like you are always going to see this as such a negative thing. And that's, I don't know what we can class that as, and kind of whether that is a generational gender role problem.
Whether that's just an outdated opinion. It's just very much outdated views. Not saying that their views and opinions aren't relevant. However, you kind of have to kind of move on with times. You do have to kind of get rid of those sort of old views, and because they aren't promoting any sort of equality for anyone or diversity. We live in such a diverse community nowadays that you have to respect that. And it's people like that saying, oh, you're going to make my child gay, but no, we're not at all remotely. He's showing an interest in something. Surely that's a positive thing. Making sure you're supporting him with his development in an area that he's quite interested in. Overall, that's a positive thing.
And my question is also, if that was a blue buggy, would his response have been the same?
It's just unhelpful, isn't it? Like that kind of, and to say that just because you're going to turn somebody gay or turn somebody straight because of the activities that you do, I mean, that's ridiculous. They clearly just don't understand anything about how life works. It's just completely ridiculous.
And I am a massive advocate for fathers. My dissertation was on fathers and the effect that they have on their children's upbringing and those sorts of things. And I will always promote fathers' input into families, into and sort of promoting their proactivity with their children. But equally at the same time, like, when one responds to you like that, sometimes you question those things, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
And you also think, what if that child was to turn out to be gay? And what would that response be
so
then?
What? Yeah.
It's not that one significant thing that you've done, Gemma, because you've allowed him to play with some dolls and push chair. That's the significant thing that's made him gay. That's not how it works. It's a series of things over and over time that not push you to that way, but you become more inclined to either be with the same sex. And so it's not just one single thing in someone's life for them to be more inclined in that way. So I always think, if when you told me, Gemma, I'm like, what would his response be when he got to about 16? And then came out that he wanted to be with a boy? What would the response be? Would it go back to that one observation?
Yeah.
We'll bring it up.
That was
this is it.
It's ridiculous. And like to what end as well. So it's okay, and so.
But like you say, it's kind of that generational misunderstanding, misinformation. So pose a question here then. What can we do in settings to change that? What are some of the things that we can be doing with our children, with our room, with our group, that starts to question that, starts to change that, starts to question those gender roles, those gender norms, those outdated opinions?
I think in early years you do naturally embed that sort of ethos of that everyone is equal, everyone has the right opportunity to whatever they want to be doing, and I think within that, obviously, that free play system does play a massive part to that, allowing them to do what they want to do. But again, you can always do extra things, such as like having those resources like those books and things like that. You can have story times around them understanding those gender roles. I know they've got a few books, I've gone through a few settings where they do have those gender role books where they talk about basically what girls can do, what boys can do, talking about those old-fashioned type of views and how that isn't relevant anymore. I can't remember what that book is. It was actually really good, but it kind of opens their eye. I know some children don't have that full understanding. However, we don't need them to have that full understanding. We just need to have them so that they have that sort of kind of level of understanding that they can be who they want to be, and that is just the bottom line. We need them to have the whole understanding of gender roles, generations, things like that. We just need them to have that simple understanding that they can do whatever they want to do within their life, obviously if it's legal, not anything, but make sure. I think that's how we, as early years, is just making sure that we are constantly embedding that into the children, that we aren't saying he's playing with some babies, that's a bit strange, or stopping that sort of play or stopping that sort of interaction. I don't, not any early years that I've been to or I've seen have done that, but I think that's what we should just keep encouraging, is that sort of play and that sort of interaction with each other.
What, again, we haven't really spoken about the subconscious, but what about, how would we tackle the subconscious? How because some settings have got quite old school staff maybe that kind of just would kind of maybe say things or kind of act in a certain way, or even parents, again, like how are we educating? What are some things we could do to kind of not educate it out of them, that sounds too extreme, but just educate them into the thought processes, the sort of the modern thinking of it?
It's a tricky question, isn't it?
Isn't it? It is.
It's actually,
because
how do you tackle unconscious thinking? That person doesn't even know they're doing that, if that makes sense. So I think it's generally just down to trying to educate them a little bit more into that, and maybe as well thinking trying to understand their view as well. So I think, we can put all of this out on people. However, how are we going to educate if we don't understand their side as well? If that makes sense. So why do you think like that? Why do you believe that that's not right? I think everyone in the world has the right to be understood about something. And I think if we're not understanding their side, how can they understand how we're trying to present something that isn't quite correct anymore? If that makes sense. I know that's not really unconscious thinking, but
I think again, something that we kind of haven't really discussed is the cultural background of it as well. So sort of the cultural elements of it. So different cultures have different views on men and women, and again, those gender roles culturally. If we've got children from those cultures in our settings, we kind of need to understand that background as well.
Yeah.
That's an interesting point, because being respectful as well of different religions and different cultures and upbringings is as important. It's not if they're from a religion or a culture that does have certain values and certain teachings and certain ways, we can't then also be saying to the child, well, you can't think like that because I don't. It's about having that open discussion and being respectful of different people's choices as well.
It's like just values we embed, isn't it, really, with the children? Obviously that mutual respect and tolerance of other beliefs or religions and things like that. So like Ellen was saying, you can't then unwind that from that child, because that makes them, then that's their religion, that's their belief. So we also, I think within that, doesn't mean we can't educate them on how we believe something should probably be. But again, that's allowing that child to have a choice at the same time, if that makes sense.
And again, it could be something that child then goes home and says, Daddy, why do you do that? Or Mummy, why do you do that? They'll start having they'll take those conversations home as well, potentially, couldn't it?
We're educating so that they can make an informed choice. We're not influencing and pushing certain values or ideas onto them. It's about equal opportunities, is about allowing them to see a whole landscape to then choose something and us supporting that decision, not about saying, right, we don't believe that anymore, let's now do this. It's about having balance. In the sort of world of early years then, how does understanding a parents or caregivers, it could be the family, friends, or early years practitioners, how does gender impact on their education and opportunities for children? How does what children have around them influence them and their opportunities?
I think there is an awful lot to unpack there.
I think there's like different sections to that question, isn't there?
So I think personally, I think that a lot of parenting styles are going very much to all children. You can do anything you want. You can go and be anything you want, go and do anything you want. You can, women can become soldiers, girls can become soldiers, boys can become dancers, whatever that might be. I think that is becoming part of a generational parenting style. However, parents can forever say that. Parents can promote that, guide children to their directions they want to go, support them with university fees, whatever that might be, put them into extra classes after school. But unfortunately, I'm not going to go too deep into this, but unfortunately, some things can never change or will never change. For example, paternity leave, statutory, is 2 weeks. That's fathers have 2 weeks after the birth of their child to have off with that child. The mother has 9 months statutory. Of course, a gender role is going to occur from that.
Absolutely. And there's pros and cons. I mean, obviously the mother gives birth, it's the physical element of it. Of course they need longer to recover and that kind of thing. But as you say, of course it will inevitably form a gender role.
But that pauses a woman's career. I say pause, potentially stops a woman's career. because of that. And until those barriers, boundaries are stopped or adapted to what other countries have in place, because this is not a worldwide, there are other countries out there who men and women have equal statutory rights, maternity, paternity. Yeah, they're probably, their gender roles, their way of lives are very different to what our children see.
It's as soon as the get-go, isn't it, really, that they're complete, it is just straight in gender role. Mum's at home caring, nursing me, dad's going out working, have a 2-week break. It is that you've got to think about how you tackle that after that. And like you said, it does sometimes can completely stop a woman's career after they've had a child, because you think they've got to figure out nursery runs, things like that, and then school runs, and then that again shortens the amount of times that hours that they do within their job. And you think about a lot of jobs nowadays as flexible as probably they maybe used to be, especially if they wanted to return, and say if they did have a high-end job as well. Some of them might need is a little bit more demanding than the hours that are available for her. So it is again thinking it's not worth her doing that. And then that's where the gender roles again are naturally embedded for her to then be at home, because it's better, if that makes sense, than maybe dad going.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? There is a biological link there, which you can't change. I mean, obviously, men can't have the child for the family, so unfortunately, that's always going to be there. And it's looking at what stage does it then go into a non-biological and influenced kind of concept, I suppose,
or in our country, a forced concept.
Yes, yeah, based on law, absolutely, yeah. It's an very interesting point, actually, that it's so much wider than just what it kind of
a pink buggy in a setting.
Yeah, a pink buggy in a setting. Yeah, absolutely. So what influence does gender have on cultural capital? So opportunities. So maybe it could be STEM skills, so science, technology, engineering, those kind of mathematical skills, or even down to things like fine and gross motor skills. How does gender stereotyping, maybe let's flip it the other way, impact and potentially negatively impact on those opportunities? What's the benefit of that diversity?
Ellen, you are bringing out some big questions here.
I was more thinking about, for children, so having the ability to, for say girls, for example, to be playing with diggers or construction things and that kind of thing. Does that have a benefit on their gross motor skills that they ordinarily, if they were perhaps playing with dolls or not risk taking and that thing, having that male kind of influence, would they have the opportunities more to take risk and have physical play and that kind of thing?
I think all settings provide equal opportunities for all of those things. I don't think any setting, for example, risk taking or certain activities, any setting would say girls can't do that, boys can, or anything like that. However, girls are drawn to certain activities, boys are drawn to other activities. And and that's not a research-based answer, that is a 15 years of experience answer kind of thing. Looking at those rooms, children at a preschool age will direct to, girls would often go more to an artsy craftsy and a home corner. Boys will focus on the messy play, the rough play, the risky play. Does it impact their development? In a capacity of the room, I mean, Trin, you might argue me here, but in a capacity of the room, I would say no. Yes, they kind of have these pre-thought out views of things, but on a capacity of what you spoke about, risky play, all children need risk play. All children need that to develop appropriately and well. They need to be taking those risks, and that kind helps support brain development, basically. But does girls playing in a role play area and artsy craftsy more than a construction area, is that going to impact on their whole development or delay development or anything like that? No, I don't think so. I think girls develop faster than boys in certain areas anyway. So, for example, boys will always, stereotypically, boys will always potty train later than girls. But fundamentally, as a whole, thinking holistically about that child, no, I don't think it does impact on their general development.
I have a follow-up question, but Trim, what do you think?
No, I would like to say no, I do. I think I agree with Gemma. I think that the room allows them a lot of opportunities to develop. Obviously, I know children will develop at different rates, but they still have the same exposure to that learning resources, if that makes sense. So I do agree. I don't think it again, like I'm saying, this is just educated guess. There's no facts behind it, but I think it is very much that they just have that resource there available for them. It doesn't necessarily stunt a development or an area of development, if that makes sense.
So follow-up question. I'm really gonna really bend your brain. So why does gender matter then? Why does it matter if we are stereotyping or not?
I think it matters when people, again, talking about those British values, enforce their thoughts onto children. Boys shouldn't be dressing up as princesses. When those comments are made, that's going to impact the child.
Absolutely.
That's what impacts that child, is those comments or those denials of things or pushing them in a certain direction is what impacts that child and reinforces those age-old stereotypes, those gender roles that we are trying to squash. It's not the what that's impacting. Does that make sense? It's the way we are addressing, or the way that we are talking to the child about what they are doing.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. Yeah, I think it's not that gender roles should be diminished within early years at all remotely, but it shouldn't be, in a way, a factor, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be something that's viewed as negative because you are a boy or a girl. I think it's, again, like Gemma was saying, it's having those old-fashioned thoughts embedded into the children that you are trying to get rid of, or you're trying to, again, embed into them that your gender doesn't stop you. It should push you at all. Do you know what I mean? It shouldn't be something that is a negative. Your gender is your gender. It is what it is. There's nothing like, there should be no sort of negative stereotypes on that child, which means in hope it would never stop their development.
Definitely.
Or kind of impact their development at all if those views are embedded into those children.
Definitely. And the reason I asked this really is I'm going back to where you were asking earlier about how do we challenge things? How do we even approach that conversation with people? And I think, again, in modern kind of way of thinking, when we're talking about equality and diversity and inclusion and equity and all of these things, people often label certain things of, oh, that's because people are gender stereotyping. Yes and no. It's the main overarching thing is that they're not giving an equal opportunity. It doesn't matter whether they are racial stereotyping or whether they are saying that girls can't do that, boys can't do this, or whatever it is. It all comes down to that individual has a bias there, and they are not treating somebody with an equal opportunity.
And for me, it's also again, talking about equality, diversity and inclusion. How do you promote equality, diversity and inclusion in your setting? We promote Chinese New Year. It's our favourite thing to say. But actually, again, having that conversation, actually, this is what we do for gender role. This is how we promote boys and girls. It doesn't need to be as big as or as small as Chinese New Year. But, it doesn't need to be that sort of cultural element. It's just what we are doing for boys and girls, isn't it?
Exactly. I promote gender roles because I am trying to promote equality of opportunity for people. It's not just you know, I let boys play with prams, full stop. I let boys play with prams because
and they're pink.
Yeah, and they're pink, yeah, because it develops their emotional side, because it does this, because they have an equal opportunity to learn what a caregiver does. You know, it is that, so what? When we go back to kind of an Ofsted kind of style of approach, and we're talking about impact, so our intent, implementation, and impact, our 3 I's, that impact, that's what we're talking about. And that is that higher level of practice in early years that we're pushing our learners to think about, not just what are you doing and how, it's the why.
Absolutely.
Really important, really important.
One thing for me, this is completely off piste and is absolutely, well, it is what we're talking about, but it's not
More
on that.
Than me.
Oh, we're going there, Ellen.
Wow.
We've only just started. What my question is, what are your thoughts of gender reveal parties?
I mean, I think it's very much a tradition for families, if that makes sense. If I'm honest, I don't really see much of a problem with gender reveals. I think I kind of see them as a celebration. For the whole family to come together to celebrate an unborn child and give that family, give those parents some sort of support really around them. So I don't really see a thing of it being an issue with the whole revealing a gender of a child, if that makes sense. I know some parents, they don't want to know, do they? So they wait till, and that's absolutely fine as well. I think, again, it's that thing of having freedom of choice of what you want to do and what you not want to do. I don't see it as a thing where they're labeling, you are either the boy or the girl, do you know, if that makes sense. So I think I don't really see an issue with gender reveals. I think it is just a time of celebration and families and friends being together to celebrate this new family forming. And I think it's quite a nice tradition, if that makes sense.
Do you know what, as you were saying that, in my head I went, but it means that everyone knows what they can buy that child now.
That's what I'm thinking.
That is the problem. That is the whole problem. You know, because you are then
pink for girl and blue for boy and things like that. I completely understand that. Again, it's naturally.
And I obviously had that thought, and I own up to having that thought. And then I went, no, Gemma, that's not okay. That's what we're trying not to do. You know, and it's kind of coming away from that pink and blue thing, isn't it? I think that's my issue I have with it, is the pink and blue thing, rather than the celebration for the family. Yes, we're having a child. It's going to be lovely. It's going to be a growth of the family. I think it's lovely. But for me, it's the label of the pink and blue before they're even born.
I think as well, it's again on the more of the argument side of that, is then how would you go about sharing the gender?
You just have a celebration about having a baby. What, a pre-birth party?
Then how would you go about revealing a gender, if that makes sense? Again, I know I don't agree with the pink is for girls and blue is for boys, but again, that's something that we all see all the time. How do you break away from that?
It's a pre-birth party. I think that's the only logical thing to call it. It's just as catchy.
I like it.
A pre-birth party.
I'm too British for isn't it? What's the point, honestly?
Yeah.
Having a baby. You know, what else are we gonna have next? Honestly, it's gonna be celebrating next.
It just feels
very contrived.
It feels quite for the Instagram, I think, isn't it?
Oh, it is. I'm not massively on board with even baby showers, if I'm honest. I am completely
not even a pre-birth party. Will you come to a pre-birth party?
Celebrate the child after it's born. You know, welcome the new life into the world. You know, when it's happened. And I do understand it, of course. I do, and it is a sex reveal party. It's not a gender reveal. It's the wrong term, and I think that's an issue for us that work in the field. We understand the difference between sex and gender. One's biological, one is a social construct. It's a very different thing, and I think that we see that in society, that people don't understand the difference between it, and that's where these bias and prejudices come from. Ultimately, when people seem to have a massive issue with people that are either not their biological gender or want to change it or don't have a gender, and people seem to have a major issue with that. It doesn't actually affect anybody but that person, but instead they choose to have a major issue, and it all stems down to that kind of sometimes unconscious bias, sometimes very conscious, and a generational thing. And I think you're right, it does pose a question about the pink and blue from even before that child is even brought into this world successfully. And personally I would have a post birth party to welcome to the world.
Equally as catchy.
That's perfect for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, that was a curveball that I just
threw out there.
So, other question then, again, sort of back to upbringing of children, sort of what they're seeing in their early years, in their home and with their caregivers. If you've got a family with the same sex couples, how would that look to a child? What differences do you think that child may come out with? What views might be different for that child potentially? Is there a difference in same-sex couples?
I think even within that question there, it is a lot to unpack, because you think, okay, what the child sees from same-sex, say if we've got two mums, two dads, that's what that child sees. However, how does society affect that child with same-sex parents? So from what I'm thinking is that will be their norm, for the fact that they have two mums, two dads, without any sort of social impact on them to start off with, if that makes sense. That's just something that's normal to them when they're kids. However, when they get older, you even see it now, is with same-sex couples, they try and label one of them as a girly one or the more masculine one. It's for people with those outdated views to make sense of that. To make sense of the fact that two girls being together, there must be the more man one. There is a masculine one there. And you do get lesbians that are more masculine presenting, absolutely. However, that's a choice for them. That's a thing for them to feel more comfortable. But again, society still wants to put a label on as that's the man. And then if you've got to the male same-sex couple, one of them's definitely got to be the girly one, apparently, to society. But that's not actually true. So that's when it affects the children with the same-sex couples, if that makes sense. So you're thinking, then they're very confused in their mind why other people have a mum and a dad, but I have two mums or I have two dads. And then they're saying, so which one's the male of the relationship, or which one's the girl of the relationship? When for that child, they're trying to unpack that. So I don't think it's so much when they're kids. So I would say probably to about 3. Does that really impact them? Because that's their norm. That's all they know. And it's not, and it's till they get older and have that greater understanding of the difference, it's when it impacts them and how they view the parents, if that makes sense, is when you're starting to get that social influence of society then starting to embed in them, and their friends or peers around them are questioning that. It's when it starts impacting them and how they view the same-sex couples, if that makes sense. That's when they start to challenge that, or they start questioning you about that, because they do have to put, for some people have to make sense of it, they have to stereotype it as a girl and a boy relationship, even though it's not. And I think that's when it impacts the most, because the children start thinking like that, and that's when same-sex parents have to tackle that.
Isn't it interesting how at the start of the conversation, I'm laughing because it's not funny at all, but Gemma, you were saying about how children, when they see a large animal with 4 legs and they're told it's a horse, they assume every animal like that is a horse. Isn't it interesting that some adults haven't grown out of that? Because they see somebody with short hair, they think male.
That's a boy.
And that's the thing, you have those presenting women who are gay, but then are labelled a boy. They're just boys because they wear because they go and shop in Sports Direct, or they go and shop in the male section of a shop. That they're a boy.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And when we're talking about opportunities and things, and looking at stereotypes and that kind of thing, and football, it comes to mind. We've just had the Euros, which England won, yay. And everybody assumes all of the female players are lesbians, naturally, but they also always assume that all of the male players are straight.
It's
bizarre, isn't it?
that winds me up the most, I think, when it comes to football. It really winds me up. We were in the pub watching that, and they turned around and they're like, why would anyone watch this? And I sat there and I thought, well, you're sat here watching it.
Yeah,
it can't be that bad.
There was a French advert for Le Bleu, the French national team, and they had, I think it was a few years ago, but it resurfaced for the Euros. And they were showing footage from football games with skill and everything, but it was female football players that they had superimposed male faces on, and then they revealed that it was actually females playing, and to challenge that gender stereotype that people have. That where you were saying like, oh no, I wouldn't watch that because it's women's football. It was challenging that, and it was such a brilliant advert. I'll dig it out and send it to you both.
I think as well, again, within, if we just say talking about sports or within jobs and things like that, sports for females are definitely, especially football, is so underrepresented by people. Again, you're thinking men get paid a lot more in football than females do, a lot more. And it is kind of looking again at those sort of, we don't so much have a pay gap anymore in some things, but in that's definitely a thing, that there's a pay gap in that.
And I understand it comes down to all sorts of different things of how much money goes into it to be able to play, for pay players for it, and men gets a lot more sponsorship and there's more money in and that kind of thing. So I do understand in football why that still happens. But as you say, with the pay gap argument is looking at, is that the reason why, or actually are you just paying females less? So are you able to actually demonstrate that? Because otherwise that's a very different thing.
And I do understand, especially when it comes to football, male football is more renowned. People do go and watch that. They'll pay season tickets, things like that, to go and watch them, and so on, so on. And then the female might not have as much, but then who's doing the coverage? If that makes sense. Why are you not covering the same amount as the males are? If they were, wouldn't they both be as popular, if that makes sense? Obviously, I know again it comes down to public opinion, obviously, of course I do. However, shouldn't they be still having the equal amount of coverage as the male teams are?
Absolutely agreed. And that's where you've correctly mentioned about the gender pay gap. Actually, it's a very big part of gender roles and what children can expect to achieve it in life is that gender pay gap. And often people go, well, of course people are paid the same for the same job. We know that that's not the case. Yes, there are reasons why a male and a female may be paid differently, but as long as it is actually for those reasons, like you say, if it is, okay, because society and everything, that's something else that we need to change and adopt, but at least that is the reason. But if it's because that there isn't that equal coverage, that's what needs to change then. And it's understanding why and not just accepting, it's just because they're girls.
I think it's also the advocates that we've got for it. So the women can't be the sole advocates for these things. Again, we look at sport. So you guys are talking about football. Sorry, it doesn't mean anything to me. But but we've got it exactly the same in cycling. Cycling means nothing to you guys. But, there's been questions asked of the male world champion, current holder of road cycling, who have said, you are the first person to do this. And it wasn't until he said, no, I'm not actually, there's a woman out there who's already done that, that all of the press went, oh yeah, I suppose they do. And then everyone's gone, he's amazing, he's been a massive advocate for women's cycling. It's like, no, he just promotes his sport. Like, come on, this should be what you're doing. You should be the one saying the women have already done this. The women have already got this under the belt, this under their belt, this under their belt. There has been these winners as women. Sure, I'm the first man to do it, but women have done this before, and there needs to be those advocates in the sport that actually shout about the women's sports as well during these things. Females in sports is a big topic for me, but that's not what we're on, so I'll stop now.
The best laid plans in our podcast plan, but it always goes down a bit of a rabbit hole, and I love that, because that is exactly how people need to be kind of thinking, and those bursts of inspiration of, and that links to that, and this is how I can see it in practice. That's how it makes it real, and not just what you read in a textbook and learn on courses and things. You actually see it in practice.
There's those questions that they should be thinking about in their head, and how they should tackle certain things. And
absolutely. It's the I know this will sound extraordinarily corny, but it's these sort of conversations and topics and things that make me proud of our profession and the industry that we're in, because we are talking about things that other people just wouldn't even consider, and I love that. So thank you, Fred.
The one thing for me, and again, is how we see it in, talking about where we were talking about same-sex couples and how it's seen in settings, is when you have a child who starts, and maybe you might not have been in for their first visit or something like that, and another member of staff comes up to you and goes, they've got two mums. Did you know they've got two mums? And you go, all right. And it's when people go, oh, so they've got two mums. So who is it? Is it mummy? Come on. It's just.
Yeah. I think, again, that's the thing. Like, why is it a big deal?
Yeah. Why have you felt the need to tell me this information?
The fact they have two mummies or they have two daddies. It's like a secret. It's not shameful.
No.
They just have two mums and two dads.
Completely.
It's a family dynamic. That is all it is. But for some people, it's like, and again, I generally think it's because it's obviously science related. There's only a girl and a boy can make a child. So how do they get their head around that two mummies have a child? Because then they have to investigate. But why is that a shock? Why does it matter? It's 21st century. We have that science now. And you get that horrible label of this child was the test tube baby when you look at it like that.
Yeah.
It's like
completely. And again, you've got heterosexual couples who have IVF or have used IVF to have their child, or have had a donor, or have had a surrogate. But actually, it doesn't make that child any different.
No, and the only difference is the fact that it's got two mums or two dads. But even those heterosexual couples who are struggling still go down those same routes as two mummies and two daddies.
Absolutely. And I think sometimes it can be useful for not making that child feel awkward in assuming, where's daddy today or whatever, and then that child being like, well, if it's useful information, share it for sure, because it could be
when we come to Father's Day or something like that.
Exactly that. But otherwise, I think it doesn't need to be sensationalized. It's
No, I think obviously it's just normal. Just leave it as something normal. Obviously there's going to be things such as Father's Day that are going to be a little bit different, if it's two mummies, obviously. And then again, if it's Mother's Day and you've got two daddies, there are going to be things that are a little bit different. However, you still need to make that experience inclusive, if that makes sense, for that child. I know maybe they don't have two mum. If it's Father's Day, you can still write mummy cards for them, if that makes sense. And again, there are conversations where you create that parent partnership with those parents and kind of think about, how would you like us to go about that? Not in a in an intrusive way, if you get what I mean. It's you just want to support them as much as possible about how they would like their child to go about this, if that made sense.
Fantastic. Well, what an interesting discussion. When we was telling my husband this morning, we were doing our podcast on gender roles, he was like, oh, what's that about? And I said, it's about, males and females and that kind of thing. And who knew that it was going to go down so
we
many
didn't
different pathways. We could have spoken about this for hours,
the rest
and
of the
hours.
day.
I know.
It is, absolutely brilliant. You've given such an interesting perspective, Trin, and you've given me more questions to go away with than I thought I would as well, and challenged my own understanding of different things. So I really appreciate having you on the podcast and having such a different perspective and a really valuable open discussion. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
So Trin, one of the questions we like to ask everyone, or one of our all of our guests as they come on, is what was your dream job when you were a child and why?
Probably when I was a child, it was most likely to probably be on the building site with my dad. I used to love riding his diggers when I was a kid. So it was a digger driver. But as I got a lot older, I think one of the most one I really wanted to do was social work, but in a child protection. But I realised that wasn't really an industry I wanted to step into. I wanted to be more on the more happier side, watching them learn and develop and influence and things like that with the children, and create into the little humans that they are today.
Lovely. So thank you so much, Trin, for joining us today. It's been lovely having you on. And thank you to all of you for tuning in today. We'd love to hear your thoughts on the topics we've covered or answer any questions you might have about what we've discussed. Your input really helps shape our conversations.
Don't forget to like, share and follow our podcast to stay updated. And as always, let's keep the conversation going about early years. Until next time, take care and keep making a difference.